Freedom Radio Hour. Live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Freedom Radio Hour. I'm your host, DJ Adam Cruz, and I have my fantastic co-host,
Eddie Nicholas. What up, beautiful people? Welcome to Capital Radio 91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan. What up, Mr. Cruz? What are we talking about today?
Wow, there's some I know, there's a lot to cover today. First of all, we're here to not only give you wonderful music, but that music, business news, and trends from around the globe. Freedom Radio Hour is your number one source for music, business news, and trends from around the globe. All right, so I want to talk about four main topics that are going to flip your beanie. The first thing is that I want to talk about Apple. I'd like to talk about this brand new coalition called the Mic Coalition. I'd like to talk about Warner Music and what it has to say. And the last thing I want to talk about tonight is what's happening with FM radio and why is it considered still the most stable part of the music industry today. So let's talk about the first thing. I'd like to talk about Apple. You remember how last episode we were kind of giggling because Apple, in the process of trying to launch its Beats subscription service, you know, they bought the headphones from Dr. Dre.
Which I found out only cost $14 to make, and he's selling them for almost $200 a pair. Shame!
Exactly.
But go ahead.
Exactly. So Apple has paired its headphones with a subscription service and its vast marketing share, which is the iTunes audience. And what they're trying to do is launch this subscription service entitled Beats. Okay. The problem is that they have rivals now. Remember we were talking about Jay-Z has purchased a company in the U.S. called Tidal. And what Tidal is trying to be is the Bose of streaming. Tidal has had a difficulty getting up and running basically because people don't want to pay double the price for seemingly higher quality streaming. And the second thing is that it was touting its exclusivity, which in the end really turned out to be faulty because fans were pulling the content from Tidal and putting it up on YouTube. So there's so much for that security, right? So Apple was like, well, we're going to get in on this too. We're not going to let Tidal win, especially now that we're about to launch our subscription service. So what Apple said is, well, if you want to use our operating system, don't forget we have a rule in place that if you want to use our operating system to apply for your little subscription service, we're charging 30% more. So what does that mean? So Tidal, if it's already $19.99 a month and you mess around with Apple and subscribe through Apple, then you're actually paying $25.99 a month.
Well, Apple got to make money too.
Well, listen, that's a problem now because now Apple in its
and they're going to find a way to make money.
Yes, in an attempt to try to make money and to put a little stank against their rivals, they've now garnered the attention of regulators. Regulators are now investigating Apple's practices because they're charging that Apple may in fact be creating an unfair disadvantage. Why? There's three major issues. They're saying the first thing is that they believe that Apple has been going around applying pressure to record labels and such to not re-sign with Spotify while it still has its freemium model in place. Remember freemium? Do you remember? Tell our listeners a little about freemium. If you were signing up for Spotify, what's freemium mean to you?
Freemium means that you get a portion of the content free for you to either download or for you to play, and you don't have to pay any extra charges because you're not paying anything anyway. But freemium, the operative word is F-R-E-E.
Right, free. So thank you. So freemium is there to try to get you and entice the consumer. I always equate it to like a dealer. You know, the first one is like free, and then you get hooked.
Another little taste.
Yeah, you got to pay. So that's their freemium model, and they build a substantial business. Spotify has in doing that. So Apple has been applying pressure to labels allegedly to basically not re-sign with Spotify because this free model is in place. Why? They're basically trying to kill this freemium service because they feel like they're not making enough money. Which, you know, always makes me giggle because if they don't feel like they're making any money, you know, we're not making any money. To recap, when it comes to the artist and the songwriter, the people that actually make the content, we are currently enjoying the benefit of a 0.001 monies per play.
And that's of a penny.
That's less than that's a fraction of a penny per stream. Yes. So now there's a big problem because the regulators are eyeing Apple and trying to investigate their practices. So they're saying the first thing is you're applying pressure to other streaming services in a sense to try to dismantle Spotify and have the competition, take the bite out of the competition. The problem that Apple's having is it's against trying to pay more. Evidently wants to pay less out because then they can just make more in the end. So they're having a problem with that.
Who is they?
Well, Apple.
Because when you say they, are we talking about Apple and all of its investors and all that? Are we talking about the people such as ourselves that go onto these sites and purchase? Or are they talking about the artists that give them the material to circulate? Who are they talking about?
Well, here, like I said, the first thing is that the regulators, they want to question whether persuading these music labels to cripple the business model of Spotify is creating an unfair advantage. That's number one. Number two, they're trying to deal with this app in purchase issue. Remember, I'm telling you, if you use their service, you got to pay 30% more. They're saying that that's totally not okay. The last area is a report that came out from The Verge that basically is saying that there's more pressure that they're putting to charge more for services than they ought to because they're not doing it across the board. It's just against these rivals.
Well, because they're trying to use their service.
Well, they're saying
and again, if I'm a company and you already have something set up where you can sell your own little thing and do it on the side, then why do you want to come over and use my service? And if you want to come over and use my service, hint, because you think I have more people for you to reach, then yes, you're going to pay for it.
Well, we're going to talk about that and more. I'm going to take a quick break right here at the Freedom Radio Hour.
We'll be back. Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
Freedom Radio Hour. Live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
What up, beautiful people, and welcome back to Capital Radio 91.6 FM. I'm one of your hosts, Eddie Nicholas, and I'm here with my co-host,
Adam Cruz. We're live and direct. We are right here on the Freedom Radio Hour. Before we broke, we were talking about apples and some hot water right now. Because
apples and oranges and bananas. That's what it all is.
The shade of it all.
Yes.
So basically, Apple has garnered the attention of regulators as it's about to launch its Beat service subscription. Why? Because there's three main problems. One, they're alleging that Apple has been applying inappropriately pressure to labels to not re-sign with Spotify because Spotify is their competition and they have a free service, a freemium service. So they're trying to pressure the labels to not re-sign, which therefore means that the competitor has a bigger chance to crumble.
Now, when we say pressure, are we talking about pressure, or are we talking about just offering the client a better deal?
No, they're alleging that Apple has been using its executives, its inside folks, to directly reach labels of prominence
so and
persuade them. They're lobbying.
Okay.
Which is a problem because when you have the muscle of Apple, when you do something like that, it has a crippling effect on other businesses. It's not like where there is healthy competition. So that's the one problem. The one allegation is that they're pressuring labels to not re-sign with Spotify, which therefore, in essence, cripples Spotify. Number two, they're saying that they're like Tidal. Tidal is trying to do exclusive content. Well, Apple wants to do the same thing. They want to get some musicians to do exclusive content just for the Beat subscription service. The problem with that, because Apple is so large, that doing that creates a big dent in the market and causes a problem for competitors like Tidal. The third thing that they're alleging, we'll talk about it. The third thing that they're alleging is that, like I was saying, if you're using Apple's operating system and you're purchasing a subscription from a rival, Apple is charging that user 30% more. So if it's $19.99 a month for the service, if you use Apple's operating system to buy that service, it's now $25.99 a month. Which regulators are saying those three things, if the investigation turns up something, is in violation, because what you're essentially doing, Apple, is removing any competition and creating a monopoly, which in capitalism might work because you might want to say, well, let the best, more successful company win and the rest crumble. But you and I need to care about competition because it's you and I that need to be able to negotiate better rates over time with companies over our music. If we don't support competition in the market, then we're essentially allowing one company or two companies to dictate our prices. Don't you think we ought to be fighting for more competition?
Well, that's why we have services that we have now, like Bandcamp and all these others, where it takes all of that out of the hand of all of these extra people, and you deal with it specifically for yourself. In regard to, Apple charging what they are charging for people to go to their site to get such things like Spotify, whoever else, I do the same thing. You are not going to come use my site and not pay me. And people have the option, if they don't want to pay that, what is it, $25 or $29, they can go directly to those sites and pay the $19.99.
But if you use Apple as your mode for receiving subscriptions, then that's
you need to find another mode.
Oh,
okay. If you don't want to pay what Apple is asking, then you find another way to go about doing it, and that's what folks do anyway.
Well, we're just about ready for another break, but when we come back, we have to break down what's happening with Pandora. We've been spending a lot of time on Spotify, on Tidal, on YouTube, and on this Beat service, but we've rarely scratched the surface of what's happening at Pandora. So
now, is Pandora one of the older ones?
Well, it's another kind of streaming service.
Well, I know it's a streaming service, but I know Pandora's been around for a while.
Well, it's been around longer than Spotify for sure.
Okay.
But Pandora's having some problem because it's trying to drive the rates that they pay out to us artists down, not up. All right, well, we'll talk about that and more right here on the Freedom Radio Hour. Where?
Capital Radio 91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan.
Freedom Radio Hour.
What a beautiful people, and welcome back to Capital Radio 91.6 FM. I'm here with my buddy Adam Cruz, and we've been talking about some fascinating, over-the-top stuff. Apples, bananas, and oranges. But what does that have to do with anything? Before we went off, we were talking about Pandora, or get ready to talk about Pandora. Yes. Now, when I think about Pandora, matter of fact, that's a good name, Pandora's Box.
Yes, because that's what we've opened at this point, haven't we?
But when I used to listen to that station, I would always only listen to it because they gave me all the plethora of Motown great songs.
Right, you loved your Motown.
Yes.
Well, Pandora, we haven't really talked about it much in prior episodes, but Pandora, as one of their main missions is to drive the royalty rate, the payments that they're paying out to BMI, ASCAP, and Sound
The
Exchange.
people that pay us.
The people that pay us, they want to decrease that. Why? Because they say they want to pay the same rate that they pay to other services. All right. Here's the problem. Pandora, in trying to drive the rates down, you think that they didn't get a lot of people on their team. You think most of the people that are on our side of the aisle, meaning we need those rates to be increased, not decreased, so that we can get closer to a livable wage. Everyone else seems to think that fraction of a penny per stream is a ridiculous rate, except for these companies like Pandora, who are trying to create a flat rate so that they all pay the same amount, regardless of whether it's FM radio, internet radio, or the like. But you and I have a problem with that. Well, Pandora got some unlikely allies and two of the biggest tech giants in the world, and that is Google and Amazon. So those companies and others have formed a coalition. They're calling themselves the MIC Coalition. That stands for Music Innovators Consumers Coalition. Their little mission statement is saying that they're trying to help the artists and get compensation for their work, and that they are trying to do right. But opponents to this MIC coalition is already up in arms because they're saying, wait a minute. You're talking about the biggest 10 companies in the world have aligned themselves with Pandora, whose one of its biggest lobbies is to drive the royalty payment down. What is up? Well, here's what's happening. You have our three main points that we've been covering for a while, which is that the Department of Justice is reviewing the rates that publishers can charge for digital performance royalties. The publishers are lobbying for the ability to pull their negotiations rights out of ASCAP and BMI. Why? Because they want the ability to go and negotiate and get a better rate elsewhere on their own. Okay. The second thing is that the Copyright Review Board is they're mulling over revisions to the rates that labels and artists get paid through Sound Exchange. Pandora wants to push its per stream payout down, while Sound Exchange is lobbying to double it. Check this out. So right now we're getting 0.001 per play. Okay, that's not even a penny. We've been talking about that. But now, Sound Exchange at least is trying to lobby to double it to 0.002.
We can almost get half of a penny.
Right.
The nerve! The nerve.
I know. And so at least Sound Exchange is doing that while Pandora is fighting to bring it down. So here's what's happening.
They all need to be closed down.
A ceiling.
No, seriously. You sit up here and you talk about a fraction of a penny of a fraction of that, and they talking about how much money they have spent out and given to artists and all of that. They're not doing anything to justify with what they're doing, because it's not helping the artist, it's not helping the writer, and it's not helping the publisher of the original music, where you again are defaming and making what we all do creatively to be worthless.
Right. And we said this during the break, that you got a lot of nerve, big companies like this, where you are expecting the creators of the music, the artists and the songwriters, to work for free, but you don't want to work for free.
No,
you want to make money.
You want to get the advertisers to pay, and out of that, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yeah. Advertisers. So the big money is actually coming from these advertisers that are paying to get their product heard. And we talked about that.
But if we didn't have our content up there would be no avenue for advertisers to buy into, because you need the music to sell the advertisement.
We need advertisers to buy into our Bandcamp pages and all of that type of stuff, because again, there you do justify and you put your own prices. Of course, Bandcamp gets a percentage of that, but as an artist, if it's done properly, you get the majority of your money.
Right. Well, you sound like the president of the National Music Publishers Association. His name is David Israelite. And
Hello,
what he's
David.
saying,
maybe I need to be.
So Mr. Israelite is saying that streaming giants like Pandora have long exploited these archaic regulations to use songwriters' work while paying them almost nothing. Okay, so Pandora paid out $126 million in cost in the first quarter of 2015. Essentially royalties to licensing bodies such as Sound Exchange, BMI, and ASCAP. That amounted to more than half of its total revenue, and a key reason why it recorded a net loss of $48 million. So they're reporting that they're in the red, okay? BMI currently receives 1.75% of Pandora's overall revenue. So that means less than 2% BMI is getting, which means if that's 2%, that is whittled down to us.
And who gets the 98%?
Thank you.
So, they may be saying they were $48 million because they had to pay that out or whatever, but you only still paid 2% of your overall 100%.
That's right. Well, let me finish this out. So that equates to about $4 million when we talk about the first quarter of 2015.
And $4 million is enough to only pay one artist.
Well, listen, that's the problem. So Pandora, they want to reduce that rate from 1.75 to 1.7 to match the rate paid to most radio stations. That's what they want to do. So instead of paying, so BMI would receive, if Pandora gets its win, would receive 1.7 of Pandora's revenue, not 1.75.
So that $4 million would go to 3-point-something million.
Right. Now, ASCAP, their rate court ruled last year that Pandora must give 1.85 of its annual revenue to them, to ASCAP. 1.85. So there's obviously a fight. Everybody's fighting for themselves to try to get a closer to a 2% of these giants' revenue.
And it needs to be more. These giants need to be paying 25%.
Well, here's the problem. Pandora's saying, oh yeah, you want us to pay more? Well, you must not want radio stations like us and lots of other companies
then they need to close and dissolve.
Then you must not want us to exist, because we are not going to be able to function if we continue to operate at a net loss.
We as artists are not going to be able to continue to function with the loss of not being paid proper residuals. So, I want to
save more.
I know, but you cannot. I'm not going to. The nerve of these people. With their craziness. They need to go out of business.
Well, we're going to talk about this and more. We want to break down further what's happening with Pandora. And next time, we're going to break down radio. You know that the radio is still considered the most stable form of the industry, which is crazy because radio is volatile too. Anyway, thank you for listening so much. Definitely check out freedomradiohour.com and post under everything that we're talking about, because we'd like to hear from you. And definitely check out eddienicholas.com with his brand new one-time single and more coming soon. His Do You Want to Dance EP will be out later this year. Of course, yours truly, DJ Adam Cruz. For my brand new Freedom LP, that and more. Thank you for tuning into the Freedom Radio Hour. I'll see you guys next time. Love you, Sudan. Peace.
Peace out. Capital Radio 91.6 FM.